Welcome to Babblecom 5. This is episode 12 of season 4 of Babylon 5, Conflicts of Interest. Mr. Garibaldi's business is doing okay. Despite a father's anxiety, he reunites him with his temporarily mute daughter, owing to a morph gas attack, out of the blue and only charges 30% of his usual fee. He won't tell bookkeeping because he is bookkeeping and doesn't want to get himself in trouble. All the while, his new anti-Sheridan contact is keeping a watchful eye and preparing to give him his first mission, which may quite literally be do or die. Sheridan has decided to start ticking items off his to-do list with Delenn away, and the first of these is having Zack remove Garibaldi's gun, link and identity card now he's not on the payroll. Zack had been holding off on the assumption he'd come back, but Sheridan says he'll be waiting a long time if he's waiting for the universe to make sense. So he wants it done today. Why the rush? Apparently, he doesn't like the company he's been keeping. Elsewhere, Franklin is back and checking in on Susan's new home at the Voice of the Resistance. One slight snag. Lights, camera, but no action. Or in this case, power. Apparently, one of us has been working on it for days. Franklin helpfully suggests S04E12, which he saw a lot of when they moved refugees down there. Lots of power there. Ivanova then gives herself a verbal forehead slap and says, well, of course S04E12, don't know why I didn't think of it sooner, aren't I great, off to a shuttle I go. Franklin comments to one of the staff that he likes her, even if she does scare him. Just don't tell her that. Zack's meeting with Garibaldi turns up what was otherwise a good day for the ex-chief, back to front. Whilst he's fine with the link and identity card going, the mood sours when he's ordered to turn over his PPG and his backup weapon. Zack says the captain would just have sent someone else if he'd said no, but Garibaldi says from his point of view that would have been better. No-win scenario for Zack. We get a nice launch sequence for Ivanova's shuttle, then flick back to Garibaldi's quarters where Daffy Duck is getting bugged by, bugs. Garibaldi is just about to eat when Wade shows up with a job for him. He explains he needs someone guarded and something expedited off the books, which means Garibaldi going up against station security. Yesterday, that would have been a problem. Today, not so much. Ivanova lands on the S04E12 pad and runs into Zathras. No, not him, Zathras. Long and comedic story short, there are, or were, 10 Zathrases. Same family, same name, slight difference in pronunciation. This Zathras specialises in crisis management, lacks management, and talks to dirt, walls and ceilings. But mainly dirt. On the plus side, he immediately grasps Ivanova's need for power, and their chaotic conversation ends with him leading the way. Lots of exciting new angles of ships approaching the station today. As it turns out, Garibaldi still has back doors, even without his identity card, and although the contact has changed to his wife, he's getting on with his new assignment. Only when they finally arrive in the arrivals area, it turns out the wife is someone he knows rather well. In fact, he was considering her being his wife at one point. It's Lise, now Lise Hampton Edgars. We see her in black and white flashbacks as she's appeared much earlier in the series, and it's the same actress, remarkably. It seems that Franz, the husband we knew about, had an affair, and being Earthborn, was favoured in the divorce court on Mars, whose judges are from Earth, so cleared her out and took their daughter, who she hasn't seen in a year. Garibaldi knew none of this, but she knew he was happy on the station and didn't want to mess that up for him. But he says she was his life, so she had every right to get in touch. 6 months ago she met Bill. Turns out her new husband has more money than God and owns about half of Mars. Garibaldi decides she's broken his heart enough for one lifetime, so declares that he'll do this job and then try very hard to forget she was here without drinking. Then it's time to go. Sheridan has invited Londo to a meeting, along, surprisingly, with Jakar, although he never sits, to discuss the radar activity on the borders of the non-aligned worlds. He mentions the Drach as one of the aggressors, and Londo knows the name, describing them as smart and vicious, but the stuff of legend unheard of for a long time. Sheridan tells him they were at Zahadum. Sheridan notes that in the past, when a Shadow War ended, the Rangers would monitor for signs of renewed shadow activity. Now that mandate is null and void. So he wants to retask them to act as a police force, patrolling border spaces to protect civilians and going only where invited to go. Jakar thinks the other racers will see this as aggression on Sheridan's part, and to his own surprise Londo agrees with Jakar. But that's why they're both here. Sheridan notes that they never agree on anything, so if they both agree to allow the White Stars to patrol their borders, then others will accept the idea. Londo immediately protests that they can defend themselves, but Sheridan is determined that they need to try and build something off the back of the departure of the Shadows, which of course is what the station was built for. He lays it on thick with Londo, saying if they don't do something, blood will be on their hands. Londo doesn't like it, but is forced to agree. Zack returns to the main security office and asks the computer for a sitrep. It notes that of 72 passengers that disembarked the ship, only 71 are accounted for, and the bay was accessed by Garibaldi, who clearly had a spare identity card with his old credentials, which Zack now cancels, along with any other accesses he might have kept. He's not impressed. Garibaldi is in a wide open bar for their meeting, which he dislikes, with an alien bartender doing a good Tom Cruise impression in the background, and I could swear I've seen him before. Their contact arrives and hands over what looks like a glass cube with something embedded in the centre. He says it's a molecular iso block, harder than diamond. You can only get into it if you know the molecular code. Apparently it's a cure for a genetic disease affecting telepaths that can turn into a contagion that affects other telepaths only, which others would be interested in obtaining or destroying. And some of those others have inevitably arrived. Garibaldi sees it coming and gets them out, disarming one attacker and rearming himself into the bargain. Their contact is taken out, however, and their escape route is blocked by Garibaldi's revoked accesses. However, Up offers an alternative, and they escape into a ventilation shaft. Garibaldi sends Lisa and Wade on ahead while he covers the entry point, but as the door comes down from sustained PPG fire, neither he nor the assailant open fire on each other in the shaft. Garibaldi realises what's up and chases down Lisa and Wade, yelling for them to back up, just as PPG fire starts to perforate the shaft ahead of them. Garibaldi tells the pair to head to Docking Bay 3 as it's abandoned and keep that in mind. But when they pop out, they're in Red Sector. Why? Because they were being chased down by telepaths who knew where they were going. The others were so scared they were broadcasting Bay 3, so Garibaldi gets the security officer to get a squad there while he sends the pair off station via a black market identity card seller. As they go their separate ways, it's apparent Lisa doesn't want to go like this, but they do as Ivanova's shuttle comes back up. The two teeps are duly prowling around Bay 3 when they're confronted by Zack's squad. Realising they are outgunned, one says, "To the future," and cracks a tooth, as does the other. Then they crumple. Garibaldi is the second late to try and stop it, and he and Zack exchange looks. Ivanova's got what she needs from Epsilon 3 and is almost ready for a test run. She and Franklin pass Lisa in the departure queue. Sheridan is furious with Garibaldi as he has 3 bodies on the deck, and Garibaldi is offering no explanation and is in no mood to swap niceties. Sheridan is very close to shutting him down and says as much. As he returns to his quarters, a message from Lise Hampton, no Edgar's, is waiting for him, but he deletes it. In the morning, a new call comes in from William Edgars to thank him for the safe return of his wife and to offer him a position on retainer, which would mean him coming to Mars. Garibaldi accepts. Finally, the voice of the Resistance begins its broadcasts, telling anyone who wants to hear that after 3 years of lies and misinformation, the truth is back in business. So, unusually, I jumped straight onto this, well, the day after anyway, from lines of communication, because I knew my weekly schedule was going to get tight owing to real life, and this was a real contrast because we have a very focused episode, even with the Voice of Resistance subplot, offering both comedy value and a serious message in the closing moments. This one is really all about Garibaldi, and for this episode you can pretty much accept that he could have just had a natural fork in his road in going into business for himself, because you can see that he does enjoy directly seeing the fruits of his labour. And while Sheridan and Zack's timing sucked, it does result in us getting some good old-fashioned Garibaldi action and gratuitous use of the ventilation shaft trope, only with telepaths in the mix. And utterly out of the blue, Lise comes crashing back into Garibaldi's life. We saw her in Babylon Squared and A Voice in the Wilderness Part 2, thanks to the Babylon Project for an assist with that one. Once again, the casting gods have smiled. Remember all the actors in Babylon Squared coming back for War Without End? And so we get this delightful continuity where we don't have to pretend we know it's supposed to be the same person when it blatantly isn't, which is nice. Only problem is she's not married to Garibaldi still. Again, he does not have the best of luck when it comes to love life choices, it has to be said. Now, Elise clearly believes what she's been told about what it is that they're there to collect, but we have here Teeps who are armed, disciplined, and equipped with cyanide capsules. These do not strike me as being blips, which means by extension Black Book Psychor. So this is all very interesting because we've seen this relationship building over the last few episodes with Wade, and now culminating in an offer for Garibaldi to get to Mars with Edgar's clearing the way for him. Also interesting that whatever's in the vial was said to have been developed off-world, ostensibly because only off-worlders could track the genetics involved, but also a very good way to keep Psychor eyes off it. All very interesting. Nice to see down below again too. It feels like it's been a while since we saw real station life, and also nice to revisit Epsilon 3. See that? Seamless. Oh, it was. So yes, like the bugs in Londo's quarters from way back, there are more of them. Zathras's, that is. Brilliant scene. Ivanova completely lost, while Zathras is absolutely steady and bonkers with it because he knows exactly what he's saying. It's Ivanova who's just not getting it, poor bloke. Personally, I'd like to meet Mrs. Zathras. I mean, bringing up 10 of them? In fact, thinking about it, this should come as no real surprise because in War Without End, we do see another Zathras, although I'm not sure if he was actually Zathras or just the same species. I'm sure Zathras would tell me. No, not that one. He owes me money. Sheridan bringing Jakar and Londo into the same room together is worth mentioning too, because Jakar would clearly rather be anywhere else. But it's a clever play by Sheridan in amongst the Earth issues to bring them in to try and address the Raider issues, whilst also retasking the Rangers into the bargain. And Jakar notes that it is indeed a worrying thing if Shadow Tech is being employed by some of them. As I've noted recently and as Sheridan does here, the first ones may have left, but their legacy endures. And finally we have Ivanova, Zathras notwithstanding, beginning to tell it as it is. And sadly, inevitably, her message in the closing moments resonates so very clearly right now with what's going on in the real world, and unfortunately that might be the case whenever you watch this, I suppose. It's a strange thing that we are so ready to believe a single source of information, particularly when others are being snuffed out. I'm sure the Vorlons had a view on that one. You'll know by now that I've got mixed feelings about the CGI work on externals this season, and I was smiling to myself on this one because we see a lot of the shuttle from slightly unusual angles, beauty shots of odd areas of the station, and this one shot of a freighter coming in looking from below the station as it went between the stabilisation arms also caught my attention as something that hadn't been in the mix of traditional shots before now. It's interesting because none of it breaks the visual language of the show that we're used to. It's just the style that's noticeably different. So again, if you have any feelings on that, let me know in the comments. So, call me a traditionalist, call me Zathras, but never Zathras. This was a good, solid, primarily station-based episode, and I enjoyed it for the sheer nostalgia factor of it being just that, if nothing else. It has the sense of catching breath before the tempo changes again, whilst also being quite an action-packed episode in its own way, which moves Garibaldi's story on some more into the bargain. It was also good to see Londo and Jakar, even if it was only briefly, as with all the bouncing between the station and Mars of late, we haven't seen much of them. So with this one in the bag, I will also draw breath, but it just means I'll keep to my steady one-a-week pace from your point of view. This also marks the halfway point for the mini DVD cases, just 3 left to go in this season now, and I will catch you for the next one.